Hola, hola. How you doing?
Good evening,
everybody.
good evening.
Hola, hola. Agustin, how you doing?
I'm good.
Awesome, awesome. I like that beat. Just keep it going.
I like that.
Right? Okay.
Yes.
Hey, it's your birthday. On the face of a hero today. I don't know whose birthday it is today, but happy birthday, right? It just came to my mind. Things come to my mind like simultaneously, like.
It's somebody's birthday. We have 8 billion people in the world,
Hey,
or 7 billion, I should say.
Being spontaneous, the continuity. Of course, welcome to the face of a hero, and you got Stevie and
Agustin.
I'm always pointing the wrong way. Agustin Marron. He's my buddy, my friend, my brother from another mother. You know, we've been bringing guests of all different walks of life. And this particular guest is taking some time to schedule because of what he does in his life, his profession. It is hard to get. And we finally got him. I'm like, oh, yes. And we
corralled him.
Huh?
I said you corralled him.
Yeah, I corralled him, but I had to go through his secretary. I had to go through the PR. Myrna Maldonado, shout out to Myrna. That's my girl. We've known each other for a long time. Here in Lake County, Indiana, because there's a Lake County, Illinois as well, right?
Correct.
Yeah, so we want to make sure that we don't get the states messed up. So, of course, you guys know our website is thefaceofahero.com and a phone number. You have a hero, bring her or him on our show or them on our show, 773-809-0106. Of course, the views expressed by us, okay, are not the same views expressed by the callers or the people that are commenting or our guests or our advertisers, okay? If you want to advertise on our show, be the sponsor of our show, by all means, contact us at 773-809-0106. So are you ready to bring up our guest?
I am. I'm excited.
Right?
I'm excited.
I'm not even mentioning his name until you guys see him come up on our screen. And he is one busy man. And you'll get to see why I say that, because it is. Because he is. And I think he's done amazing work throughout all his entire life, his profession. So none other than our hero today is Bernie, Mr. Bernard Carter. Woo woo! He's our Lake County Indiana Prosecutor. That sounds like a very tough job, just the name prosecutor. But we're not going to talk about his profession per se. We're going to talk about him. Who is Bernard Carter? First of all, as a person, as a human being. Welcome, Bernie. Am I okay to call you Bernie on the air?
Absolutely.
You know, I've called you Bernie for so long.
Yes. That's what I go by. I recognize that. Absolutely.
Sometimes it comes out of my mouth. I'm like, ooh, I meant Mr. Bernard Carter.
No, that's fine. Absolutely.
Well, thank you for finally making some time to come on the show.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, so we can
thank you
have a spotlight as our hero, and today you are our hero. Hence the face of a hero name of our show, the face of a hero. So, thank you once again. I hope you relax, sit back, and enjoy the show because it's about you. You know, many times we see platforms about law enforcement officials and officers, and it's a different kind of show. But you know, as I was telling you off the air, that it's about Bernard Carter. So let's get you going. Let's get started with this show. Who is Bernard Carter? Many people may know you as a prosecutor, but may not know you as a person, as an individual. Where are you from, Bernie? Can you hear me? Where are you from, Bernie?
I'm here.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. It was going in and out, but I can hear you now. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think you froze for a second there. Where is Bernard Carter from? Where are you from? Tell us about you. Who is Bernard Carter?
Yeah. You know, I think my life growing up really fits me well for the position that I now hold and some of the duties I do now and some of the public speaking I make. And the reason I say that is I grew up, started off in East Chicago I was born in East Chicago, and in third grade, we moved to Gary. And then in 10th grade, I moved back to East Chicago. So I've had a little bit of both. Most of my elementary school was in Gary, the city of Gary, and my high school career basically was in Chicago. So I grew up in Brunswick area, not too far from and he and I are contemporaries, Roy Dominguez.
Shout out to Roy.
He was right down. I didn't know him, but he was right down the street from me, and we were in different schools. But Roy and I was on the same streets there, right off of Clark Road and Broadway and Fifth Avenue, during the same period of time. And that was a really a nice period of time growing up in Gary. We moved from East Chicago, got a better housing than we had in East Chicago. We lived in an apartment. We moved to Gary, had our own home. First time I ever had grass, in my yard. In East Chicago, it was just rocks, and we stayed by the tracks, really on the other side of the track, literally, and off of Pennsylvania Street and Guthrie Street in East Chicago. So I kind of grew up over there. We were very poor, relatively speaking. My father worked in the mill, but we were very poor, 10 children. And my father had a third grade education. My mother had a third grade education, kind of interesting. One came from Alabama and one came from Mississippi. My mother from Mississippi, my father from Alabama. They moved up here during that time of our country where a lot of the African Americans were moving out of the South for a better living and to prosper. And my father and my mother came up to this area for the same reasons, and that's when they met. I think my father always wanted his children, and he always lectured. He's third grade educated, but he was extremely educated, well-read individual. He used to always read to me the Reader's Digest. The entire it would come in the mail to him, and he would read in the back. They had the word power, where you learn different words of the month and stuff like that. He would go over that with me, and he would read just about anything that he could get his hands on. So he was a very educated man, I would call it. And he always emphasized that his children needed an education. He wanted us to get an education. And he also wanted us to care about people. And it's kind of interesting because I was raised up to be told to care about others, not about yourself. And I kind of keep that same philosophy. And most of my children, and I say most of my children, I have 6 children, and most of them feel the same way. I have a son who works for the operating engineers here at 150. I have a son who works in my office who's an attorney, Bradley Carter. I have a daughter who has a master's degree, and she works for the city of Gary. And then I have a daughter who is at IU studying law. And then I have another daughter who's 15, my last of the Mohegans, who is basically wanting to be a lawyer also, but she's involved in speech, debate, and she's very active in school. And one of the things she did, unbeknown to me, and I have to mention this part, they have a group of upper class with 15, 16, 17, basically sophomores, juniors, and seniors who take care of some of the challenging individuals who they have in special ed and things of that nature at Crown Point High School. And she volunteered. And she sits with them at lunchtime. She makes sure they get the books, and they just kind of help care for them. And that was a nice program that Crown Point has. And she volunteered without I even knowing it. And she mentioned it to me, and I was so proud of her because then it goes back to what my dad was saying. She's
got a great heart.
Think of others, and she's a straight A student. So she's doing well, but she thinks of others who are struggling, and that's what it's all about.
That's it. Yes.
And then I have another son, Chris. He works for Mayor Lightfoot in Chicago. He's one of her community people who go out. And for instance, if she can't speak at a function, he will go and speak at a function. He's 24, soon to be 25 next week.
Wow.
And he's doing well. He graduated from Morehouse College, which is a very prestigious college and very costly college. So I'm really proud of every one of my children because they're doing what is necessary. One of the other things I'm doing with them, one thing I have, my philosophy is this, and I talk to them about it almost every day. I type it to them on text. I say, what have you done today to make tomorrow better? That's our family. That's our family.
That's wonderful.
Yeah. And I want to challenge them to think about what, making myself better, making other people better, on my progress to do things and make yourself successful. I want them to be challenged. My second thing I'm doing with each of my kids is they all have bank accounts. They all have several types of bank accounts. And I want them to put a little money away. Don't get paid and spend and live on your paycheck. Put at least
right.
away, 10% away, whatever you can put away. And interesting enough, my two younger kids, which I have more time with, is able to save more than my older kids. So
they got more expenses, more responsibilities.
I had lunch with my three sons last week, and the whole purpose of that lunch, and I told them the whole purpose of this lunch is to talk about finances. How are you handling your money? What are you doing with credit cards? How are you using credit cards? Don't use credit cards. Are you putting away just something every paycheck consistently? I don't care if it's $10, put it away consistently, it will grow. And my philosophy with them is basically put away a minimum of 10% in a long-term savings, not where you can go get it, but in long-term savings. So I caution all of them, and I tell people in general when I speak, set up three accounts. One account is for long-term. One account is basically for monies that you have to go to if you need it. And then the other one is a strictly emergency account. And you set those three accounts. That first account you don't ever touch. The middle account you live off. It could be a debit card or whatever. And the third account is an emergency account. You don't touch that either unless it's an emergency. And then we define emergency. So I try to help them with that. And I talk to the public about that. I go to schools and talk to kids about that. If you implement that, you can be very financially successful. I don't care what you make. You can make $35,000 a year and live very successful.
That's right.
Wow. And I applaud you for that. Because as you know, we see parents don't even know about financial literacy. They did not have the parents that instilled what was instilled in you.
Yes.
They're just trying to be parents or don't even know how to be a parent, as we say.
That's so true. Absolutely.
Children, right?
Absolutely.
But I applaud you into you being in their life, investing in their life, and not because you came from a great college, not because you came from the best neighborhood, because we just heard you were not. You were not brought up in the best of the best. You don't have to. You just got to know how to care.
Yes.
You came from the best education, your father.
Yes. Oh, very much so. Yeah. And he emphasized that very heavily. Absolutely. And one of the reasons I'm real big on finances, because finances take a lot of stress out of your life. It takes stress out of your marriage. It takes stress. You don't argue about money if you got things under control. You really don't. And I know a lot of young couples will argue about money and buy this, buy that. You really understand how to save, and that there's a requirement to save, then that don't become an issue. And then when you get ready to buy a car, you can just go to that long-term savings and take a little money out of that, and then you replace that money, of course, at some point. It is very helpful and in a need. Another thing about money I want to say really, and this helps all of us, very wealthy people, I think, do it more than us as poor people, relatively speaking, poor. There's three things you do with money. One, you save it. Two, you give it away. And three, you enjoy it. We have a difficult time dividing those thirds up. Most people I have a friend who's extremely wealthy and don't spend a penny. And I'm like, well, when are you going to use it? He's not helping anybody with it. He's not helping himself with it, but he loves to open up that bank book and see the diversity that he has in savings and all this stuff, but it's not being put to use. You have to give away a third of what you have at all times. Don't wait till you're dying to do it.
And then you can't take it with you.
And you need to save a third, and you're going to live a good life.
And you can't take that money with you.
No, you can't. No, Jesse Jackson said that at Rudy Clay's funeral. He said he never seen a U-Haul behind the hearse.
Right.
It ain't gonna happen. You can't take it with you. But and not only that though, Eve, I think not only you don't want to take it with you, you don't want to hold on to it till it's too late. You let people enjoy it. Just recently, and I don't want to talk too much about myself though, but just recently, I just said, I'm gonna give every one of my kids $1,000, including my young ones. So I gave them $1,000 and I tracked what they did with it. And like I mentioned about my two young ones, I kind of controlled that. So I told them, hey, you put 800 in long-term savings, do whatever you want with the 200. So I controlled their two. My one daughter came to me, Bryce, she's at IU, and she said, I want to put my whole 1,000 in long-term savings. Because, I take care of her. She's a student. She's 18 years old. her mother takes care of her. She doesn't really have the need. So she
Right.
saw that $1,000 as something, and that goes back to our teaching. She saw that $1,000 as something. I'm gonna get ahead and put a little bit more in my savings.
Right.
But my
Right.
15-year-old, she basically said, no, I want $200 of that.
Let me enjoy a little bit of
Yeah,
that.
exactly.
Yeah,
And then my older kid said, oh, I put a little bit in the bank and I'm spending some, Dad. I don't believe him. But I just go with it because it's worth me spending $6,000 to test them to see what they would do with the money. And you know, the interesting thing about it is, and being in all honesty, it gives me an indication, and this is kind of morbid, but it's kind of true. It gives me an indication where I want some of my money to go to, which kids. I'm not going to go, I let them know it's not going to be equal. You know, it's going to be who I think going to do the best with it. Who I think
who's going to
share with other people.
Right.
Absolutely. Who's going to share with other people, and who's going to have a quality of life, who got the best marriages. It's going to be all that kind of, it's going to be a formula, and they want to spit on my grave juice, so it's my money.
You know, isn't that what our Father does with us?
Yes.
So has he given, he can take it. He sees
Yes.
what we do with it.
Yes, absolutely.
We have to tithe that 10%.
Yes.
10% savings, and that is so true. It goes back to the Bible. It already tells you how to live it.
Yeah.
And thank you for sharing that as a father, as a responsible father that cares enough about his kids' future.
Yes.
Correct. Because we're not going to be here forever.
Yes, that's for sure. You got to get them
up.
Absolutely. That's so true.
So you have served in different capacities, Bernie. Now we're going to talk about what you've done from your first position to where you are today.
Yes.
Obviously, you love law enforcement.
Yes, I do. Very much so.
What, or when should I say, the light bulb went on and said, this is what I want to do
as a career?
Yes. You know, that's a good question too. And I tell you when. I was in probably about 5th grade. I was at the East Chicago Library. And there's a series of books, and I'm sure they probably still got those books there now, and a lot of the stuff might be online, but there was a series of books that was geared toward certain ages in school about careers, what kind of career you want. And there's it's titled, So You Want to Be. And I looked at the law book. It was one about you want to be a lawyer. And I did want to be a lawyer. And in that book, what it does, it outlines at that certain age and certain grade level, what you need to be doing now to accomplish that goal. And I talk about this a lot with young people because if you want to be a lawyer, I knew I wanted to be a lawyer in 5th grade. I really didn't know all the dimensions of lawyering, what a lawyer could be in different capacities and all that stuff. But I always wanted to be a lawyer. There was a lawyer named Henry Walker, very prominent East Chicago attorney, African-American, only African-American attorney I've ever seen. I later learned of Attorney Dawson, but it was only like 2 Black attorneys in the city of East Chicago at that time when I was a kid. And I used to shine his shoes, Henry Walker's shoes, because he was at Broadway and Main Street at First National Bank. And I used to sit out there in the First National Bank and shine anybody's shoes. Nowadays, you go broke because everybody's wearing tennis shoes and everything. But I used to sit out there and I used to shine people's shoes. And he would always give me, I charged like 25 cents to 50 cents, depending on what they want. And he would always give me a $5 bill. Always give me a $5 bill. And I thought that's so nice. And I finally asked him, what did he do? And he started telling me he was a lawyer and his office was upstairs. He took me upstairs and showed me his office. And he's just such a nice individual. And from that point on, he would always see me and say, Bernie, how are you doing today? You know, just nice to me. And that kind of got me wanting to be a lawyer. But I knew from my dad that it's one thing to say you want to be something or do something, but you got to start accomplishing that now. And in reading the book at that time, I've outlined as to what I need to be doing. It talked about you had to be well-spoken. It talked about you had to be well-read, knowledge, able to get along with people. It kind of outlined different characteristics that you need to have. And you start examining yourself and saying, do I have these? And I had deficiencies. And I said, let me work on those deficiencies. And I continue to work on those deficiencies, to be honest, every day. Because, you know, interesting thing, I met with the police chief of Maryville yesterday, and I met with another individual in my office. And I learned so much from those 2 individuals that I did not know when we started discussing crime and we started discussing what their thoughts were in terms of how to reduce crime and stuff like that. So you continue to learn and you continue to try to implement those things. And that's what I do in my office, too, with my staff. is I keep challenging them and that we have to do more. One of our greatest things in the prosecutor's office is we don't want to convict an innocent person. So we want to go out of our way to make sure we got the right person as certainly as we can be. And then we still could err. We really can, because people ask me all the time, are there innocent people in jail? Absolutely. And many of them are there because of false identification. They're not there for the most part, like in the Chicago situation where officers are framing them. It's usually a misidentification, or you pick up the wrong person. So, I'm always conscious of that. But going back to the education part and how I knew I wanted to be a lawyer, I always felt that I would be able to assist people. Once I got to college, I really thought about being a sports attorney, and that's what I really wanted to be. And that would have been my greatest love, I think. But I enjoy what I do now, but I always wanted to be a sports attorney. But, in order to be a sports attorney, once you get out of law school, you got to have a client.
Right.
You got to get one of those big athletes, There was a classmate of mine I met, and that's kind of why I started wanting to go into sports law. He always talked about sports law. And his name was Eugene Parker. If you Google Eugene Parker, he's one of the most successful African-American sports attorneys. He represents Deion Sanders, a little bit of everybody. And he graduated from Purdue. He got drafted to Detroit Pistons as a guard, and then he subsequently got cut. So he had that movement of knowing professional athletes, and that's how he got started. And if you don't have that, it's hard to get into a professional.
Absolutely.
But the interesting thing, I wanted my son to become a sports lawyer. And I had talked to Eugene because he had an office in New York. He lives in Fort Wayne. He still lives in, I shouldn't say still, but he throughout his career, he lived in Fort Wayne. He would fly to New York. He had a $5 million private jet, and he would take his jet back and forth because he had 5 kids in Fort Wayne and his wife was in Fort Wayne. He never wanted them to expose them to that New York life. So he raised all his kids in Fort Wayne. I say he, in past tense, in the sense that he passed away not too long ago. And he always talked about, one of my kids coming into his agency and working in that agency. And then when he passed away, it dissolved and it went in different directions. So then Brad ends up with me. But one of the interesting things, Eugene used to always tell me in law school, I'm going to be a sports agent, Bernie. I'm going to be a sports agent. I said, well, I would like to be one too, but that's hard to be, And then he would just joke with me saying, oh, you're going to be, I was clerking in the prosecutor's office for Jack Crawford at the time. And he would joke with me, no, you're going to be right there in the prosecutor's office. And sure enough, I'm still there. So he had some foresight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's great. So you were an attorney for how long?
Yeah, I graduated from law school in '84. I passed the bar in '83 because I took the bar. Back then, you could take the bar in your second year in law school. I took the bar early and I passed. Roy Dominguez did the same thing. He was a year, 2 years in front of me. I was the first year law student. He was the third year law student. He took the early bar. I took the early bar because he took it in his second year. So I said, if Roy can do it, I can do it.
I can do it too. There you go. That's
right. You have to have that measuring stick, to kind of push you and do those things. So then I came into the prosecutor's office and started working for Jack Crawford. And I went all the way up to supervisory capacity with Jack Crawford. And then in 1990, I ran for Superior Court judge, Division III. And I won. And I stayed a judge for 4 years. But what happened was Jack Crawford had introduced me early on to Evan Bayh when Evan was running for Secretary of State. So I became real good friends with Evan Bayh, and I worked on his campaign for Secretary of State. And then Evan decided to run for governor. I worked on his campaign when he decided to run for governor. When he decided to run for Senate, I obviously worked on his campaign then too. He's always been a person I've always followed politically. But at any rate, when he was governor, he took Jack Crawford to be the lottery director. And Jack left and John DiGiulio came in. John stayed for 4 years, and then he got appointed by Evan and some of the other people to U.S. attorney. And when he became U.S. attorney, that opening for prosecutor came up. And then a good friend of mine who works for Evan Bayh at the time called me and said, hey, Evan's going to be reviewing people for the Lake County Prosecutor. Are you interested in it? I said, no, I kind of like the judgeship, And then I thought about it, and it goes back to my dad. And I said, I was kind of young on the bench. And the bench has a tendency, those who know it, when you're a judge, you isolate it. you're extremely isolated. Your friends aren't really your, because you can't get too close to the other attorneys because you gotta be neutral. And
Right.
you can have a friend who's an attorney, but that's okay. But you have to be careful what you say to people when I'm out in the public. Like some of the stuff I talk about now, I probably get disbarred if I was a judge, because I can't give my hand and show my hand like that and then rule on your case. Because if I feel a certain way and think a certain way and I'm dead set on that, then the people, one of the parties is gonna say, I don't have a fair chance with this judge. I want to move my case. So you can't do that. So there's ethical rules that control what a judge does, who they associate with, and all that kind of stuff. And I didn't like that part of it. So when my friend asked me, hey, are you interested in that? I thought, that might be a good entree to do some of the things I now do and have been doing for a long time. So I grabbed at it, and then there was 5 very competent people who put in their names too. So it's pretty competitive, and I was able to do it. But in all honesty, I think my benefit was, and I say this to my kids all the time and to everyone, it's all about what I did prior to applying for that job that got me that job. I worked hard for the party. I worked hard for Evan Bayh. I made friends. Had I not done that, I'd just been another number, and I don't think Evan would have picked me.
That's true.
Yeah, that is true. So being as a judge, let me take you back to history. You said you were young. How young were you as a judge?
I think about 30.
Yeah, that is young.
Yeah.
What was your worst case? You don't have to bring names if you don't have to, but to understand you as a judge, where you come from, and like you just said something that some people may think otherwise about some judges. Well, Judge so and so is good friends with this attorney, so yeah, he or she is biased, right?
Yes.
And I'm glad that you touched on that ethics part.
Yes.
There is a code of ethics. So what was if you did have a hard case that you really had to try?
Yeah, the hardest. Yeah, that's an interesting question. And I tell you, it's clear in my mind the hardest case I've had.
Oh, I'm sure.
The hardest case I ever had was there was an abortion case there at the Maryville Parent Planhood, and there was some boycotting going on, some pro-lifers versus pro-choice individuals, and there was a mass arrest of about 40 people, and they all landed in my courtroom. And I had to hear whether they were guilty and whether they, and the appropriate sentence. Well, they were found guilty, unfortunately. And I say unfortunately because you can pick it, but you can't get too involved. Nobody. I don't care what your reason is. But the hardest part with that is I'm sitting there as a judge, and I'll be very honest. I'm pro-life. I'm sorry. I'm pro-life, and I'm not necessarily pro-choice. But I knew I was pro-life, but I had to be neutral. And kind of decide the sentence based on what I felt. And that was the hardest decision I had to make, because I had to kind of separate my part of that. And as a judge, and even as a prosecutor now, I'm called upon to rule based on Roe versus Wade and how some of the states are ruling on that, whether or not abortions under certain conditions, or even in Indiana now, is done. And I can be, as a judge and as a prosecutor, I can be pro-life, pro-choice. I really can. But my personal feelings, I separate those. I wouldn't have an abortion or participate in an abortion. But at the same time, I understand why people do. So that's one of the things where, if you can say, and I always had issues with that when I deal with pro-life, pro-choice situations. It's easy to say I'm against it, but others can be for it, because you have to understand, to some extent, it gets real heavy in my opinion, because at the same time I fight with the fact that it's a wrong act. It's murder. It's taking a life. Right. I fight with that fact. And I don't care what nobody tells me, whether it's a woman saying I have a right to do what I want with my body. Well, I charge people every day for prostitution, so you don't have a right to do what you want for your body. To some extent, there's some limits to everything in life. So you can't sell your organs in this country. You cannot. So you have an extra kidney you want to sell, you can give it away, but you can't sell it. Things like that. So you can't do everything you want with your body. So I understand that aspect, but from a feminist standpoint, I buy into a woman has a right to control her body. But at the same time, I also struggle with the fact that having an abortion is destroying a child.
Yeah,
whether you
it's a
want to call
life.
it murder, whether you want to call it whatever you want to call it. Murder is the extreme call of it. And I don't like to call it murder in the sense that it's kind of frightening. But I think historically, people gonna look back at our period of time and be very concerned about how we took human life in the manner that we're taking it. We don't understand it now. Everybody's into their own little rights, and this is my body. This is this.
Yeah, I
But,
know.
but when all that's passed, I think people are going to view what we're doing now as wrong.
Yeah, yeah,
They
and
sure will.
yeah, I'm the same. I am pro-life.
I'm
It is
pro-life also.
it is
Oh,
a
me too.
child. It
Yeah.
is there is a heartbeat, right?
Yes.
And so
Yes.
that just shows the humanity, the human
Yes.
side of you, Bernie,
Yes.
about that. So, so now being a judge, now after being a judge, what were you? What's your next step?
And then I became prosecutor, and I
Okay.
became prosecutor in December of '93. And I was appointed by Evan Bayh. I did not have to run for the job. I was appointed. I ran for the judgeship, but I didn't have to run for that. But the interesting thing, the following May, which would be 94 of May, I got appointed December of December of '93. I knew 6 months later or whatever it was, I had to run for office. So I left a sure thing for maybe I'm only there for 6 months now. I'm gonna lose my election. But I wanted to do that. I mean, and I don't regret doing it. And it's, sometimes you have to take a risk. And I wanted to become prosecutor because I wanted that type of task. And certainly I did get it, and I ran, and I was able to win. And then I've been reelected, I think, 8 times now.
So would you say you have been the long-lasting prosecutor in history? Because you still are.
Yeah, in Lake County, by far I am. I think the longest prosecutor has been 3 terms, which is 12 years. So I'm in my 30th year. So yeah, I've doubled, a little bit over doubled the length of any other prosecutor's ever been elected in Lake County. Yeah, so that's accomplishment that I credit to my staff and the people I work with. I work with some fine people. We deal with some tough issues, extremely tough issues that rubs everyone wrong. And you can't tell a mother that her son is guilty in many cases. She'll never believe it. So with that, it becomes an inherent desire to hate me or hate the system. And that's how a lot of people feel. I mean, sisters and brothers of defendants who've done. I've done 5 death penalty cases myself, and I've shepherded or worked on about 14 death penalties over my career. And you ask them to take somebody's life, you can't tell that family that I'm a good prosecutor, or And so you lose some support in the community by doing the right thing. But you can't look at it that way. You have to say, well, you still got to make the right decision. And because on the other hand, you got family members who've lost loved ones to this person. I did the Darren Van case. Here's a man who killed 8 women in Lake County. He said himself that he killed 78 people total throughout this country. We had people coming from all over the country talking to him, looking at him, who had similar type homicides in their community that he had done there in Gary. And then the last one he did, Erica Hardy, she was in the Hammond Hotel right off of Klein Avenue. That's how we caught him, when he bundled that murder. And he did kill her, but he bundled it. And the Hammond Police Department were able to track him down, and they did an excellent job in getting him to talk about other murders that he may have done in Lake County. I was at the station, and I was in another room watching it on video. He took us to 6 bodies that he had killed and buried and put in abandoned homes in Gary. And that was one of probably the worst cases I've ever seen.
Wow.
And handling that case, you kind of really felt that evil does exist.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
So how do you not take that home? Or do you take that home? What is it like? And I was going to ask, but you answered before I asked, what was the worst case or the toughest, hardest case you have to deal with? I do remember that case where he did lead you to where the bodies were.
Yeah.
And it makes you wonder what's, obviously he wasn't in the right mind.
No, he was. Yeah, he was in our studies and with dealing with the doctors that we hired to try to understand his mind. Because one of the things you got to do in order to prosecute a person like that, you got to still prove that he's sane, that he's not insane, and that he knew what he was doing. And there's no doubt he knew what he was doing. He was very sane. He was very functional. He turned it off and turned it on. But he was a created animal. And what I mean by that is this. His mother was a prostitute. His father was nowhere in the home. His mother used to turn tricks with him in bed, in her bed, turning tricks at a very young age. I'm talking about like 6 months, 8 months, 9 months, to probably a year and a half or whatever. She would just lay him on the side of the bed and turn tricks. Now, what does a 1-year-old know what's going on? But it's the sound, it's the, you know, it's not only the visual, but it's the audio of those acts. It's a, you know, I mean, you hear two, and I don't want to get too graphic, but you hear two adults having sex. It can be kind of a child can interpret it as being pain or evil or harsh, or his mother's being hurt. You see what I'm saying? So his mother was doing that. But not only that, though, there was an occasion when he was about 6 years old. She was turning tricks in the home, very bad apartment from the way they describe it. And the John said, I want him. And she then negotiates on how much. And then that started the homosexual activity toward him by Johns. She found that she could make more money selling her child to pedophiles than what she was getting. Wow. And can you imagine what that's going on in that child's mind? Then he was taken out of that home because she was arrested for prostitution. He was taken out of that home and put in a foster care. What happens to him in the foster care system? He was raped by the foster care people. And then they put him in a group home, and he was raped by other boys in the group home because, you know, I don't know if he was just exposed to that activities. They picked up on it or whatever. I don't deal with the dynamics of that, but he was just over and over misused sexually. So he was created like a monster. You know what I mean? Yes. You know, he had no empathy. He had no desire to get along in a normal way. He didn't know how to get along. He was like a wolf being, you know, a person and raised by wolves.
It's like, why should he care? No one cared enough for him.
And that's how he was created. I mean, there was no biological problems with his brain or anything like that. He just acted out. And
he reacted to all that he knew.
And then who did he kill? All those women that he killed, who did he kill? Prostitutes. That goes back to his mother. He hated what his mother was doing.
Reminded him of his mother.
Absolutely. Absolutely. He did not kill not one woman that wasn't a prostitute. So he was geared toward killing.
He was hating on her.
Right? Yeah, the pain that his mother had instilled in him, he was trying to undo that, which is pretty heavy and pretty wrong. So when it came down to it, we had a choice to either go for the death penalty on him. We did file the death penalty. We went through all the motions, and we were just set for trial. His attorney comes to us, and our psychiatrist comes to us and says, hey, if you guys can get a term of years where he'll never get out. So he ended up pleading to 7 lifetime sentences, and we removed the death penalty. And I removed the death penalty. That was a decision made by me. I removed the death penalty solely by the reason what I just explained to you, how he was, in my opinion, created.
He was a victim of his circumstances.
Yes, he was. Absolutely.
And so I see a lot of that in our youth. So then how do you handle all of that coming home? You have a family.
Yeah, that's a good point. You know, I think one of the things is it makes me a little bit paranoid as it relates to my kids. My wife always says, "Oh, you worry too much," and you know. But I see so much, and I give you for instance,
the same way.
Yeah. I give you for instance, when my girls were younger, I used to always ask the parents, and my wife get embarrassed with it. I used to always ask the parents, "Do you have any guns in the home? If you do have guns in the home, how do you possess them, and how do you safeguard that your children and my kid now who's coming over, maybe spending the night or coming over to visit, how do they handle it?" And my wife just said, "Oh, that is so intrusive." I said, "No, it's not intrusive. If my daughter's going to stay," and my boys didn't do that. They didn't spend the night. But if you know, my daughter's 8 years old and they're going to have a sleepover, a party sleepover, I want to know what's going on in that house. I want to know how many sons they have, how many visitors they have. Do they have an uncle who's kind of weird and comes over? Because these are the people who end up molesting these young girls or these young boys, people who come into your home and our family members. And I see that over and over again. So my wife used to always get kind of upset, but she understood it from what I see every day and what I'm exposed to every day. I kind of separate, to answer your question, I kind of separate, because, you know, when you look at the homicide pictures, and it's graphic. There's nothing worse than looking at a human body being dissected, a human body that's been cut into to see the track of the bullets,
Mutilated.
depth of the bullets and things of that nature. Autopsies are horrible. So they're worse than crime scenes. They really are. I mean, crime scenes can be pretty bad. So you have that in your mind. So you kind of flush yourself out. I have a couple of my attorneys, one in particular, I won't mention name, but that person does not like to look at autopsy pictures. And I say, hey, you got to look at them. You got to look at the crime scene pictures. You got to know how this crime occurred and what occurred. And then and that just comes from being lack of experience. And then they finally start getting to it. And I have had a couple who don't want to do murder cases because of that. And I don't make anybody, because we got a lot of work in our office. So if you don't want to do murder cases, you don't have to look at those crime scenes pictures. But in order to do them effectively, you got, I've been to autopsies and all that stuff, present, because I'm concerned about a particular case and I want to track it from the beginning. So you have to have that. And that's not a pleasant thing at all. It's one of the worst things to see in life, I think.
I can imagine. You got to have a stomach for it.
Yes,
right?
you do. Yes.
But how can you keep it from taking it home, Bernie? Or has it happened where you actually took it home and your family saw it, heard it, felt it? I mean, I don't think you were born to be that strong, like from the beginning when you first started seeing these cases and bodies and whatnot. I mean, how? Talk to us about that.
I have been able to, and I don't know how, to really separate it. I think the atmosphere in our office, we enjoy what we do. We batter back and forth with conversations. We enjoy one another. So we have to be respectful of victim families and respectful of the public. But when we're behind closed doors, we respond real well in terms of our own health, in terms of so don't take it too personal and things of that nature. I think with my family, though, I don't bring home the anguish or or the madness of it. But what I do bring home, particularly when I used to do a lot of trials myself, when I'm working on a case, I bring the intensity home, because I prepare at home. I think about it at home. I'm thinking about my opening statement, thinking about cross-examination, thinking about what evidence I'm going to use. So sometimes I could be at dinner with my family and I'm preoccupied and I'm going into that zone where I'm thinking about what I'm doing tomorrow. And I try to separate that from my thoughts, but it's not the tragedy of the acts. It's how we're going to, in my mind, it's how we're going to handle it, and the intensity to make sure I'm competent enough to handle that particular case on that occasion is what I kind of try to separate from my family so we can enjoy ourselves. But I don't hear my wife saying, hey, you got to leave that at work, or because I can separate that. They can be watching TV and I'm sitting in the chair, working with my paperwork. So that my daughters, them are on TikTok and I'm in my paperwork. So everybody's cool. So that happens all the time.
Right.
You seem to have been able to shut it down from a long time ago.
Yes, absolutely. Very much. You have to too, because you can't, I tell you, one of the worst things I've ever seen, and I understand what you guys talking about or what we're talking about. There was an autopsy photographs that I had, and the person was dissected, and I say dissected, skull taken off. I don't want to be too graphic. And,
That's okay.
And the pathologist lay them on the table, and they kind of, almost like a mechanic would do with his parts. That's really what goes on with the human body, because they take it out. They want to look at the heart. They want to look at the lungs. They want, even if that's not relevant, they still do a report on that in terms of, is it a healthy heart? Is it healthy this and all that? So the family can use that for purposes of knowing, the medical history of their loved ones too. So it does have that purpose too. But it was on the dissection table, a McDonald's bag and a half-eaten hamburger. And I look at that and say, wow, how can you eat that hamburger while you're doing so that right there tells me a person who can separate,
Right.
Yeah. So I didn't use that photograph for the jury, because I didn't want the jury to see that. But you get comfortable with what you do, and it's just your job. And I don't know if I could ever get comfortable cutting into a body and dissecting it and eat a hamburger. I couldn't do that.
Yeah. So has in
Mhm.
all these years in your experience, from being an attorney, from being a judge, from being a prosecutor, has any of that actually kind of haunted you? The graphics of the pictures you've seen? I mean, I don't know how I would handle it.
Yeah, no. I think the hardest ones is when I see autopsies and I see crime scene pictures of young kids. And I don't want to talk about specific cases, family members are out there. It's very tragic. But I've seen photographs where a kid gets a gun, shouldn't have not gotten a gun, we're doing a program in our office with this that now coming up too, but and end up shooting himself with the gun. And one of them, the back of the head was complete. The bullet went through the mouth, and the back of the head is totally gone. And to look at that photograph, just with the child laying on the bedroom floor, is you never forget that. You never forget that. It's innocent, precious little child, 5 years old, is killed in that manner because of ignorance and because someone laid a gun and didn't have have it properly stored. That stays with you because that's a life that could have been saved, totally saved. But this is, so those are the kinds of ones that I really, really hate. Scenes of rape victims who have been harmed, beaten, and cut and raped, and see their bodies laying in the condition that the rapist left it. Those are haunting. Gangbangers, when I did a case years ago where 4 people were killed, and just to see the array of bodies laying around, and that's haunting. But you put it in this perspective, I think, and it doesn't haunt me in terms of going back. I don't graphically, once I'm done with a case, the visuals, the visuals, they're gone. The visuals are gone. The acting, I can talk about it like I'm talking now, but I don't see the visuals of that little child with his head blown off. I don't think of that. Similar to a person with witness in a war zone or something like that, that's just tragic, very tragic.
Well, I commend you for that, Bernie. I really do. It takes a heart to do what you do, obviously, to care enough.
Absolutely.
To separate one versus another, and not
we have 80 attorneys in the office, approximately. It goes back and forth. Sometimes we're 75, sometimes we're up to our max. But we have 80 attorneys in the office, roughly. And they all do a fantastic job, and that's why I like my job. When I go into the office, I really want to go into the office. I hear my wife sometimes, and I shouldn't say this, but she go, "Oh, I got to go to work," and I never say, "Oh, I got to go to work." I like, what time I'm going to be there, and who am I meeting, and what I have. And I don't want to be late and all that kind of stuff. That's what I be thinking,
If Natalie, you know what? And I got to commend the wife too. Kudos to her.
Oh yeah.
Because it takes a team. It takes a team, right? And you and her have been a team for your children.
Yes.
And kudos to you, Natalie. And I'm sure she's watching this. And I'm going to say, Natalie, you get to go to work.
Yes, that's right. Absolutely. She'll tell me, and she'll tell you, she loves what she does. But I guess those days when whatever, but she loves.
You don't feel like getting up.
Yeah, exactly.
Monday morning
I can clean that up, or she's gonna get me. But she's as you're saying, Eve, she's very thankful for the work that she does. She works for Allied Bank, so it's a banking institution, and it's certainly a different type of work than I do, and that's a good balance.
It is, because that way you're both not taking stuff home that now you're like this. And so, I commend her as well, because it's taken teamwork, mom and dad.
Yeah, absolutely.
To have the type of children.
Absolutely. And the best part about it is too, when we were talking earlier about finances and stuff like that, she buys into that 100%, and it works real well with us.
It does.
You can't be against one another on that issue.
Yep, I'm all about financial literacy.
Yes.
I'm teaching it. Yesterday I met a team of little bosses out of Chicago, and we're teaching them financial literacy.
Absolutely, so important.
And the parents want to take in the class too, because the parents don't know about financial literacy.
It does work. It does work.
It's so important. We got to teach how money works for you instead of you working for your money.
The statistics show that approximately 60%, and you play with those numbers, it could be 55%, whatever, but approximately 60% of all people have less than $500 in the bank. 60%.
If not more, because of the pandemic.
Yeah. And you can in your life, I don't care how much you make, for the most part, you can correct that very quickly by getting $500 in the bank or $1,000 as an emergency fund. Because financial advisors tell you should have at least 6 months of your income in an emergency fund, and that's not your savings account. That's just an emergency fund in case the roof gets blown off your house or whatever the case may be, and insurance don't cover it. You can put another $15,000 into your roof. Things like things around the house, a car engine blow up, and you got to pay $5,000-$6,000 for an engine, or you got to go buy another car. You need those emergency funds, and so when you got less than $500, that's pretty bad. Let me mention this one issue, and I'll speak about it real quick. You're here in the Supreme Court and the Court of Appeals in Illinois are looking at it. They're talking about no cash bail so people can be released without cash bail. Now, the problem with that is most people say, well, these hardened criminals shouldn't be out. They shouldn't be off on the streets, right? And I kind of feel that way too. But look at it this way, how our bail system works. If you have $500 or you have $1,000 or you have $10,000 in your possession, or you have a credit card where you have a balance that you can charge $10,000 and you get arrested for robbery. Robbery basically is like a $10,000 cash bail in Indiana in our system. You can ask the judge for a reduction, but if you have $10,000, you can get out the same day you rob somebody. Okay, so if I'm wealthy or well-to-do or take care of my money and my son gets arrested, I can go in and get him out that same day. However, if I'm poor, my son's poor, and my son's not a threat to society, he can't get out ever. He's got to stay there to jail time. I mean, to a trial time. So isn't that punishing a poor person for being poor when a rich person or a person of means can get out immediately? That rich person could be just as much of a threat to that the poor person is. But so that's the issue with cash bail, and we have to be careful when we say, "Oh no, we don't." And as a prosecutor, not Supreme Court Justice Rush, and I don't want to misquote her or say anything, but what she has publicized, and she's for reducing bail. She's for releasing people who are poor, who only reason they're in jail because they're poor. They're not a threat to society. They're not. Our two factors of bail is you got to be a threat to society or another person, or you have to be a flight risk. If you're not those two people, you should be able to sit at home or work in your job until you're tried because you're presumed innocent. So that's a tough issue for me, even because the public demands that you put them away and don't let them out. Well, they have a right because they're not proven guilty. They're only alleged to have been guilty of this crime. Presumption of innocence rests with that person. So with that presumption of innocence, people have to understand when people talk about no bail, I mean, no cash, you don't have to post cash to get out. There's some merit to that to a great extent. Our goal is as a prosecutor, and I think judges, is to make sure that person is not a threat to society as much as we can and make sure they're not a flight risk. And if they fit those two criteria, then they should be released.
How about some of these criminals that are repeat criminals? They get
those are the ones that they repeat. Then that would be classified as a threat to our community because of their past behavior, and they would be held with bail. They would have to actually post the money if they could get out. But yeah, that's very true. But that's a balance that the judge listens to. We argue. What I tell my attorneys is this: we object to every bond release. So we as a general rule. Then we have to have a hearing, and we hear the merits of the hearing. So let the judge make that decision based on what the judge hears as far as whether this person is a flight risk or harmful to the community, has done things. I mean, if you're multiple criminal conduct, then you shouldn't be out there hurting our society, and those people should be held. But if you're some kid who sold something in Kmart or Walmart, I should use Walmart because Kmart's leaving us, but in Walmart, and it's a $40 item, and you get arrested and they tell you your bond is $500 and you can't post it, should we hold that person?
No.
They're not a threat to our society. They might be a threat to Walmart again, but they're
right.
Yeah, they haven't exhibited the behavior where they're going to hurt someone.
Right.
Correct.
So, and currently those people are held. Now, normally judges are real good at that. And about the second, third time they come in front of the court asks them, "Can you make bail?" And they say no. They finally release them, but they hold them for a pretty good period of time because just by the nature of they can't make the bail, they have to be held.
We have a different system here in Cook County where I'm at.
Yes. Well, you guys have a system too that I think the Court of Appeals is looking at that now too, where the legislators have said they're going to do away with bail, and there was a lawsuit filed.
We have no bail, but some of our repeat offenders, they're getting released.
Yeah, and see that shouldn't occur. I mean, absolutely shouldn't occur because they're a threat. But over there in Cook County in particular, boy, you guys have a huge system. In terms of people who are locked up, and it's a city-sized system, where multiple offenders are sitting there. Yeah,
a whole different ball game in Chicago.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
That's my sentiments.
Yeah. So they do. I think the system does as best they can with handling the volume that they have, and even you guys even have the dispositions where a lot of times you'll do a lot of deferrals on certain types of crimes where the person never gets convicted. They just get put on probation, and if they stay clean, the case is dismissed.
and those are the ones that I think that get put on probation, that they should get additional help also, sorry, as far as social help,
Yes.
trying to figure out how to maintain, how to become a better citizen. Let me put it
Oh
that
yeah,
way. How to become
absolutely.
prospective in that. But
Yes.
some of these repeats, we have issues here, but I'm not going to get into those
Yeah,
issues.
that's
Yeah, I
a whole
understand. I
different
understand.
topic.
Absolutely,
Different
absolutely, you do.
show.
Yeah, that's no doubt. Yeah, there's
Different
no, yeah.
show.
The criminal
So,
justice system, entire system, is pretty intricate and pretty, intricate. It really
yeah.
is.
So we have a few minutes left, but
Yes.
I'd like our special guest, our hero, Lake County Indiana Prosecutor Bernard Carter, tell the audience, the world, because this is on 5 different platforms, and I thank each and every one that's watching throughout all of these platforms, and hopefully you've learned something from this. You've taken a nugget from this show, especially about who Bernard Carter is as a person, as a father, as a son, as a brother, as who he was, an attorney, a judge, now prosecutor, long-term prosecutor. It hasn't been an easy job, has it?
No, it hasn't. I mean, it's been a comfortable job. When I say comfortable, we have a lot of accomplishments and we do a lot of good things. Particularly when you meet with a family, they've lost a loved one, and we've charged someone, and we try to walk them through that process. It's a very difficult process when people lose someone, and to try to make them feel that the system works for them is very harsh. But I remember coming out of the courtroom one time, and I overheard the victim family. The guy was convicted, and they said, "Oh, he was railroaded, and that damn prosecutor, blah blah blah." And then the victim family, we got a conviction saying, "Oh, he didn't get enough. He didn't get enough jail time. They're not doing what they do." So nobody was happy. The victim family wanted more jail time, and judge sentenced, I thought, very appropriately. And the victim family said he shouldn't have got nothing because he shouldn't even been charged. So you got those two that you handling. So that happens within our system. But since you mentioned that we only have a short period of time, and one of my go-to things is obviously the family. And I think we need to echo, and I do to my kids real bad. And I say bad, I mean intensive. We need to echo to our young people: stop having these babies so young. Stop making yourself a parent so young. Wait and live and educate yourself, expose yourself, get a job, go into the military, become who you are before you start choosing to have children. And I say that to the men, I say that to the women, because in my opinion, I'll be very honest, and I've seen a lot. Because we deal when we get a conviction, we deal with pre-sentence reports. We do a thorough background on every defendant that comes before the court, so we know how to appropriately sentence that person, or should this person get a break, or should this person get a leeway, or should this person be hit harder because they as you mentioned, they've done this crime and continue to do crimes in our society, so they need to be put away. But it's so important that we generate energy into understanding that we as parents need to be present in our children's lives. And when you become a parent, a lot of the things that you used to do, you need to stop doing them. You can't be sitting on the couch smoking a joint with your child sitting right next to you. I mean, you just cannot do that, and we have fathers and mothers who do that. You have to be involved in that child's life, even if you're not, and I'm not being unrealistic, even if you're not married, even if you, but you need to be involved in that child's life. You need to be paying child support. You need to be taking that children so that child can echo you, who you are. And you remember, even at the one press conference I made, we have a newspaper here, that you may wear, the Times newspaper, and they list photographs of people who were arrested previously the previous day.
Yeah, I get that email, Bernie. Yeah. There's like 50, 60 of them.
Yeah, 50, 60 a day almost. This is just on looks alone. If you look at the majority of those individuals, and I asked the question, would you want that person to raise you as a child? The answer would be no. They look mad. People who are crackheads, people who are meth, they got sores in their face, the teeth are all out, their hair is all wrinkled. What do you think a 4-year-old looking at dad or mom, what do you think is going to happen to that 4-year-old? It's kind of similar to what happened to Darren Van. It's kind of like, you got your kid behind an 8 ball and you're kicking them further behind. So we as parents have to be the example. We have to be
you have to lead by example.
Yeah, exactly. You got to clean your life up and work on yourself. And then we'll have the reduction in crime that we have. And I mentioned to Eve when we were just doing our warm-up or just talking, you can't rely on politicians.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying they lied to you, but they lied to you because they may have the greatest heart, but it's a collective thing, and it's so different. You see that with our Congress and our Senate. You see that with our state representatives. It's so difficult for representatives from Northwest Indiana to go down to Indianapolis and get anything for Lake County because they're not totally interested in Lake County. So we're not. We have politicians who are more concerned about what party they're in as opposed to correcting our problems. And when you have that, then the families are left alone. And I take it to myself. You don't need to wait for politicians to help. You know, one of the main things people say to me all the time: "There's nothing for my kid to do. There's no facilities." And I said, "That's bull. I've taken all 6 of my kids. I've gotten them in the car and I've driven them to Chicago, South Surf. I go to my daughter goes to Valparaiso twice a week to play tennis. I take her there. I don't rely on something. So I got myself together enough so I can get a car, which, and I can drive her there. Some of these people tell me there's no place for my kid to go. Then you really should look at yourself.
That's a lie.
Peter, and fix it up and take your kid to different places. It's, so I don't buy that stuff. And people rely on that saying there's nothing in the community for my kid to do. Therefore, they out committing crime. No, don't tell me that.
No. It's all in the parents, how much time they want to invest to find out what's really happening out there where they can take their kids.
Absolutely.
Spend time with them. Take them to the park. That's free.
Absolutely. That's right. That's free. And absolutely. Go
get rid of those cell phones.
Yeah. Find out what, and you mentioned it with your daughter, dance. Find out what they have an inclination for and really push them and get them exposed to it. Spend every penny you can spend out of your pocket to promote them because they got a future and they got a long term. And you know what? Promote them.
And Lake County isn't far from Chicago. We have an app here. It's called Free Things to Do in Chicago. From the museums to
absolutely.
So if you want to take your child somewhere, free things to do in Chicago.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Or out here in Indiana. I mean, just the park.
Yep.
You don't see a lot of parents with kids at the park.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Take them to the park. Get rid of your cell phones. Put the cell phones down.
Absolutely.
You get to know who your child is and what they like, because sometimes you'd be surprised the gift that they have in them is ready and waiting to explode.
Absolutely.
That's true. Time to find that out. You are.
That's right. One of my deputies sent me a text. I showed it to my wife. He sent me a text and a picture, and he and his kids were at Lowe's. He knows Lowe's is one of my favorite stores, and so he sent me a text saying, "Hey, Bernie, my 2 kids are here working on a project at Lowe's, and Lowe's have those things where you can make a little go-kart, little small wood projects and stuff. They have a little table that they set up, and so he's there, and so he's sharing it with me, saying, "Hey, you see what I'm doing this Saturday morning?" And that's what you have to do. Because he's cognizant, he wants to create a healthy child. Because he's educated, he got common sense, and it's free. Right. And you get to take the project that you work on home.
Right.
So it's just a win-win. So that's free, and nobody's giving that to you. The government's not providing that. It's just a free thing that the store does to get you in the store.
Quit waiting for the government to give you a handout. Kennedy said, "Ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country." So we got to invest in our children. Bernie, thank you so much for coming on. We're going to have to bring you back again.
Hey, I'll come back anytime. I appreciate you guys. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, this was great. And thank you for being the hero at home, not only at your office or in the courts, but at home as well. I'm sure your kids and especially your parents are very proud of you. Would say, if we were watching you right now, Bernie, thumbs up is what they're giving you.
Well, thank you very much. And my closing remarks is, what have you done today to make tomorrow better? If all of us engage in that, we would have a better life.
That's right.
I have Bernie, I have one thing to tell you, and this is my father had said to me was, Bernie, you won the lottery.
Yes.
And I'll tell you why. Because all your kids are good. And that's what my father said. If your kids are great, there's nothing better than you've hit the lottery.
It's such a blessing.
All your kids are great.
Yeah, it's such a blessing. Thank you for that very much. And that's true. It's a blessing to me to see that. And you're absolutely true. And your father was definitely on point with that. I appreciate that. And I'm writing that. I'm writing that down now as we speak. So that's very true. The lottery has been won. You got that right.
That's right. And you and Natalie, and congratulations.
Yeah.
To both of you.
Oh, thank you.
And
congratulations.
Thank you for being my friend. And
absolutely.
Also your beautiful wife, Natalie. And so
thank you.
Thank you for the time, Bernie, here, and continue to do great. And we'll be bringing you back soon. So you guys heard it from Bernard Carter. Hopefully you guys have touched your heart, and or what you've heard from him and all that he has shared is letting you know how real he is as a person, as a human being. Thank you so much, Bernie.
Well, thank you both. Absolutely.
We'll bring you back. Thank you. Thank you on that note.
Thank you.
Wow. Yeah, that's a lot. And we've gone over our time, which is great, right? We rarely ever go over our time. All right.
Well, he was an interesting guest. I can tell you that. He was a special guest. He had a lot to say, and you know, he's a loving father. I love his ways. You know, as a father, I can relate.
Yes. Awesome. Well, Agustin, our time is up. We passed our time. Remember, our show comes on every Thursday. At what time?
8 p.m. Central Standard Time.
That's right, guys. And of course, you guys know, here's our phone number and our website, The Face of a Hero. That's 773-809-0106. Guys, we gotta go. We got places to go, things to do. Agustin, it was fun.
Absolutely.
We gotta run, and on that note, we gotta go. Vámonos. Ahí nos vemos. See you later. Bye.
Bye now.
All right. Peace to you guys. And, well, I guess it's been great. We'll be back next Thursday. What time again?
8 p.m. Central Standard Time.
I'm liking this song.
Don't miss it.
Liking it? You liking it?
Yeah, I like that beat.
I'm trying to find something to get rid of whatever I got here on the screen. There we go. All right. Nos vemos. See you later. Bye now.
Bye.